Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, Eye for an Eye, is the Season 3 premiere, and it's this point where I do want to talk about Season 3, because unfortunately, the Season 3 is shorter than the other two seasons, and there's a reason for that. Unfortunately, Danny Phantom, after this season, got canceled. Unfortunately, that was just a thing that happened. There was not, I don't know the exact reason why. Butch Hartman has cited creative differences, but Nickelodeon has cited that Butch Hartman has repeatedly gone over budget with the show. And you can kind of see a little bit with that, given, all the fight scenes and other things that the series has had. Obviously, it is a 22 minutes fight slot with a lot of fight scenes in it. So, which may explain why it did, I'm kind of leaning a little bit toward Nickelodeon as to why it got canceled. But, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. If you don't budget a show correctly, you're obviously going to get canceled. And, obviously, Butch Hartman created 3 specials during the second season, which seemingly was to draw more people in and get a bigger audience, which didn't wind up working. Unfortunately, they did not. Nickelodeon seemingly, it's a cult classic now, but I don't think Nickelodeon made their money back at the time, so they canceled it. And this, of course, caused a lot of outrage, both from the creators of the show and from the community who watched it. They were not happy about the fact that the show got canceled, and it was actually the first show where people actually showed up to protest its being canceled. It didn't work. The show still got canceled regardless, but unfortunately, yeah, there were issues with the show that got it canceled. But yeah, and adding to that, it's 13 episodes, but one of those episodes is yet another hour-long special. So really, it's 12 episodes. So yeah, they had 12. They got renewed for 12 episodes, not 13. But technically, but in any case, that's a little bit of an aside. And this is where Season 3 ultimately shows up. Ultimately comes into place. Season 3 has a lot of more one-off villains. There's quite a few more of them, and also Vlad takes a bit more of a recurring role as a recurring villain in this season. Whereas in previous seasons he wasn't really involved all that much. He shows up maybe like once every couple of episodes and is as a threat, but he hasn't shown up all that frequently. But that is what I'm saying. He's the main antagonist, but he shows up a lot more frequently in this season, which we'll get to. But case in point, he's the main antagonist of the first episode of the third season, where he decides to run for mayor of Amity Park to mess with Danny. So that's essentially what the premise is. And the episode does open up with what's essentially Danny playing a prank on Vlad. And what we find is that Vlad has just finished putting the new installing his new house and building it. He has built it to be state-of-the-art in every single aspect, while with a hidden ghost lair that nobody can get in and out of but him. So, he's very happy about his new mansion, pointing out that it's pretty much very much him. He feels like it's an extension of him. He's very happy with it. And of course, the first thing we see is the guys in white barging in, trying to tear the entire thing down, because they remark that they've been told that there's ecto materials that they need to clean up by an anonymous tip that we do find out is Danny. But of course, Vlad is visibly annoyed with the guys in white because they just completely destroyed his house. But it's then revealed that yes, Danny was the one who ultimately sent the quote-unquote anonymous tip. They just refer to him as the fainting kid, which of course causes Vlad to become very visibly annoyed, and realizing Danny wants to play childish pranks on him, he decides to return the favor. So of course Danny proceeds to laugh his ass off, and Tucker as well. Since they shown up at the guys in white obviously trashed Vlad's house and it was on the news. So of course Danny's very happy, pointing out that he finally knocks Vlad off his high horse, and wishes of course Sam pointing out that she's a little bit worried because she's worried that Vlad will retaliate, of course. But of course Danny's not really worried about that, pointing out that he's just happy to see that just would have liked to have seen the look on Vlad's face when his house was destroyed. At which point the guys in white barge in, and Also on an anonymous tip from Vlad, that's who claimed that the Fentons were harboring ghost fugitives, which of course is wrong. And of course, they immediately destroyed Danny's room. They start with Danny's room, but is this point where the guys in white, where of course Jack and Maddie come in to check in what's going on, and one of the guys in white accidentally beans him in the back of the head with one of their sledgehammers, which doesn't faze Jack at all, which is funny. But and Jack is initially, happy to see the guys in white, pointing out that he idolizes them and he kind of likes them. But then Maddie kind of gives him a look, and he proceeds to switch his tone immediately, pointing out that, what are you doing in my house? Why are you destroying my son's room? All those other things. But of course they proceed to remark that they've gotten an anonymous tip that they're looking for ghost fugitives and demand to see Jack's lab. But of course Jack immediately declares that they'll have to take destroyed over his dead body, which they have just pulled guns on him. So he immediately is like, you know what, go check out the lab, it's fine. But it's this point where Sam then proceeds to step in and tells the guys in white that they can't search Danny's house without a warrant. She points out that they need a warrant, and also is up on her ghost law, which means she knows exactly what codes they're violating and how. So then the guys in white, realizing that they can't really pull rank on her and use any sort of excuse or anything else, do decide to leave, but with Jack trying to invite them to dinner, but again, Maddie gives him a look, so he tells them to get out of his house, but also secretly wants one of their weapons because he thinks they're cool. But in any case, Danny is Danny proceeds to thank Sam, pointing out that he's very lucky that she's up on her ghosts, he's very lucky she's up on her ghosts, for ghost code and other things. But of course, does point out that this is only the beginning, pointing out that he's going to need to retaliate against Vlad for, destroying his room. So, Danny proceeds to do exactly that. Obviously, Vlad is staying in a hotel at this point because his house got destroyed, and he's currently in a shower. At which point, he sees news calling him a two-bit millionaire wannabe, which of course upsets him, pointing out that Danny has done irreparable damage to his reputation, and he really needs to figure out a way to get back at him. But it's this point where he then proceeds to point out that they're live on the scene with Vlad, and we do discover that Danny has actually pulled yet another prank on Vlad. He uses his ghost powers to turn the wall to Vlad's hotel room intangible, so that the news choppers can look right in on him. And conveniently, he just got out of the shower. So unfortunately, Danny is never going to be able to. Unfortunately, Vlad is never going to be able to live that down. Unfortunately for Danny, he retaliates by doing essentially the exact same thing when Danny's at school. Danny is of course showering after PE, and this is this one where he sends the Vulture Ghost to do the exact same thing that Danny did to him. But this time exposing him in front of all of his peers at school. So, marginally a little bit worse. And of course this persists until they show up at the Nasty Burger. Obviously, Danny points out that he's never going to live this down, pointing out that he'll probably have to change schools because of this incident. And of course, it's at this point where Vlad reveals that he's not quite done, because this is this point where the guys in white proceed to barge in and proceed to start dismantling the Nasty Burger, which of course Danny and everybody of course express what's going on, but we find out that Vlad has once again stepped in, revealing that he has since bought the Nasty Burger, and is revealed to be dismantling it because it's to clean it up for quote unquote ecto materials, which of course Danny is very visibly frustrated about. But of course he proceeds to kick everybody out while he demolishes the Nasty Burger, and everybody mourns the destruction of their favorite burger restaurant. Obviously it's been destroyed, so now they need to. Obviously, they pull it into. Tucker just mourns one of it by picking up one of the coasters, but he mourns that it will be missed. While Sash also mourns it, pointing out that he bullied a lot of kids in there over the years, and now all he has left is the memories. Which it's a sentiment that counts, but still, Dash likes to pick on kids a lot. He really needs to work on that. But of course, at this point where Vlad proceeds to point out that proceeds to rub Danny's nose in it, pointing out that this is only the beginning, and that he plans to make a lot more changes, and pointing to the town to continue to mess with Danny. And eventually, he discovers there's exactly one thing that he can do. It's revealed that it is actually election day is coming up, and Mayor Montez is up for re-election. So, guess what Vlad does? He decides to run for mayor. So yeah, and there's something I should mention, because this is a thing that's actually happened in real life around where I live. So I can't comment on this because there's no way Vlad could be able to do this, and I will get to that. But in any case, Jazz is very visibly confused as to what's going on. But Jazz and Danny are very, very visibly confused to what's going on when they discover all the propaganda and other things in the house. And it's at this point where Jack proceeds to reveal that he's got his voting shoes on, quite literally, and it proceeds to point out that that he's going to be voting for a new mayor, Vlad, which of course very much upsets Danny. And realizing that Vlad is going to essentially try to take over Amity Park by putting himself in a position of power again, he immediately remarks that you can't fight City Hall, but you can most certainly fight in it. At which point he goes ghost out of the view of his parents and flies off to City Hall to confront Vlad. And of course, Vlad is giving a big speech about and also trying to clear up some of the bad PR surrounding his name, because he was recently shown showering and had several moles on his butt, which of course the lady who's interviewing him comments on, and he tries to play him as of his beauty marks, but she points out that that's up for debate. But in any case, Vlad is then very visibly frustrated with the whole situation with Danny, when suddenly Danny appears and grabs his ankle with his intangibility and pulls him into the basement of City Hall. And of course, Danny points out that he doesn't know what Vlad is trying to do, but he points out that he's ultimately not going to work. At which point, Vlad proceeds to shift into his ghost mode. But what we quickly discover is that Vlad is a little bit rusty. We find out that Vlad is not doing a very good job, is not able to really hold his own against Danny like he used to. With, of course, Danny is a little bit confused to what's going on, but does ultimately decide that if he can very easily defeat Vlad, then it really doesn't matter. But of course, he and Vlad fight for a little bit, with Vlad of course struggling to beat him. But then we find out why Vlad is struggling to beat him. He is essentially fighting with one hand tied behind his back, because we find out Vlad proceeds to claim that he's more powerful than anybody else than Danny could ever possibly imagine. And then points to the voting booths where everybody's lining up to vote. At which point it is revealed that his end goal is to overshadow every single voter in order to win the vote in a landslide, and he ultimately succeeds. Although there is a really funny gag where one of the people who gets overshadowed is Jack, who was going to vote for Vlad anyway, so it changed very little, and I do kind of find that funny. But in any case, Danny is forced to make himself scarce, and then proceeds to, and of course it's revealed that Vlad has won an overwhelming percentage of the votes. He is, and they've never seen that in the history of Amity Park. They've never seen someone win such a massive landslide. And with that, Vlad is then declared to be the new mayor. While Vlad shifts to his human mode and proceeds to declare that he's very happy to have won the support of the people. And does remark that he will ultimately, win. That he's very happy to have won their bid for mayor. But it's at this point where he then proceeds to get up to do his mayoral speech after he's been sworn in, while Jack fantasizes about the fact that he may one day be Vlad's number 2 when he goes runs in politics further and becomes president. Which of course, Maddie points out that Jack is being unrealistic, but Jack proceeds to point out that Jack doesn't fully understand this, but Vlad proceeds to point out that when he thinks of number 2, he thinks of Jack, which is implied to feel that he thinks Jack is a piece of shit. So which is of course on character for him, but it's of course at this point where Vlad still isn't quite done. He proceeds to pull everybody he proceeds to go up to do his electoral speech, at which point he calls Danny up to be a special guest. Which of course is an obvious problem, but it's of course Vlad proceeds to remark that he's still going to continue rubbing Danny's nose in the mess that he's made. At which point he reveals that thanks to Danny, He has finally pursued his true interest in politics, and reveals that he's going to run his campaign against the one thing that Amity Park has struggled with for the longest time: ghosts. And of course, Danny realizes that this is going to be a much bigger problem, because we've also find out that that Vlad has started with the most infamous of the ghosts, Danny Phantom. And of course, he starts running a smear campaign to make Danny Phantom look bad, which of course Sam and Tucker do comment on. And do point out that he's going to continue making them look bad, but of course, Danny points out this is only the beginning, pointing out that obviously with the PR ruining Danny's public image, obviously ghosts are going to run rampant, which of course is a big problem. But of course Tucker also points out that he's not worried about it, because he means that of course Vlad just introduces a couple of laws. What's the worst that can happen? Turns out the first thing Vlad does is outlaw all technology within Amity Park under the quote-unquote Technus Act, which, is appropriate. But he also just proceeds to enforce several other things that are designed to just kind of keep everybody from getting out. He proceeds getting out and causing ghosts. He outlaws people going out after 4 p.m. He enforces a strict dress code in schools, which Sam doesn't particularly care for because she likes her individuality. And just over and over, but there's going to be attendance taken before and after class. So unfortunately, everybody's everybody's not happy about that. But of course, in keeping with what Danny said, ghosts do in fact run rampant in the streets, and Vlad proceeds to have the guys in white hunt all of them down. It's just to make it look like nobody needs Danny Phantom. Essentially, he's trying to force Danny out, and Danny, of course, points out that he's not able to turn go ghost because obviously Vlad has also installed security cameras everywhere to keep him from going ghost. So essentially, Vlad is just trying to make Danny's life a living hell in this episode for pulling some childish pranks on Vlad, who should honestly have just been the bigger man and let him go, being perfectly honest, and that's something that comes up in the episode, but Of course, Danny is of course very insistent that this is going to continue to be a thing. But what ultimately winds up being the final straw for a lot of people is that Vlad has rebuilt the Nasty Burger into McMaster's, which is a bistro and a parody of McDonald's, whereas to oppose Nasty Burger's parody of In-N-Out Burger. But in case we find out that no kids are allowed inside the bistro anymore, which of course has caused all of them to file outside and be very visibly upset, while also telling Danny that this is all his fault because obviously Danny is quote-unquote buddy-buddy with the mayor. So of course, Danny is very visibly frustrated. But of course, realizing that he needs to give Vlad a piece of his mind, he does need to figure out a way to go ghost, but does discover the camera is watching him, so he can't actually do that. But is at this point where Tucker steps in, pointing out that since Vlad took away his technology, he's going to do the same for Vlad. At which point he proceeds to sneak up on the camera and rip it out of its rotation. But also calls it his new special friend because he doesn't have any technology to use otherwise. But with that, Danny's able to successfully go ghost and goes inside McMaster's to go and confront Vlad. And of course, we find out that Vlad is obviously very visibly upset to see Dan. Is obviously asked Danny to what he owes the pleasure, and Danny ultimately decides to be the bigger man. He decides that ultimately the way to solve the problem is to just bite the bullet and offer a sincere apology to Vlad. I'm telling him that he's sorry he pulled his childhood pranks on him, and he wonders if everything can be bygones. But of course, Vlad proceeds to point out that no, he is not done with Danny, pointing out that obviously Danny that's not so much the public humiliation, that's more so the public humiliation. He doesn't like the fact that Danny ruined his image. So he's decided that he's going to do everything in his power to make Danny's life a living hell, essentially ruin his life the same way Danny seemingly ruined Vlad's, and also once again remarks that he told that when he said no teenagers are allowed, that included Danny. He proceeds to call the security to have Danny escorted out, and Danny is forced to flee, which And of course, it's revealed that it obviously did not go well. But of course, it's this point where Danny points out that he really does not like Vlad right now. But which is an understatement. Vlad is essentially ruining his life by being mayor and buying all of his favorite things. But of course, it's this point where Sam proceeds to realizes that there may be in fact be one way where they can get back against Vlad. Noting that all of the disgruntled teens lined up outside of the Nasty Burger, and of course Danny points out that they don't like him, that the teens don't like Vlad, don't like Danny either. Sam reasons that they most likely like Vlad a lot less, so they point out that she has a plan. At which point, at the school, Danny proceeds to rally all of his fellow teens to hold a protest in front of what was used to be the Nasty Burger, and of course, Dash wonders why Danny would do this, pointing out that obviously he and the mayor are best friends, supposedly. But Danny proceeds to tell them that the mayor is no friend of his, and Vlad has been trying to ruin his life just as much as everybody else's. So he proceeds to run a camp, decides that they're going to protest in front of the Nasty Burger, and make a big stink to force the mayor to come out and confront them. And of course, they decide to side with Danny, pointing out that it is a good point. That obviously Vlad is just as much their enemy as he is Danny's, so they decide to rally with him. At which point they all gather outside the Nasty Burger, sans Danny, who has his own plan going on. But of course, Danny proceeds to point out that, of course, we find out that eventually Sam and Tucker point out that Danny doesn't seem to be among them. But of course, Tucker points out that he's probably, quote unquote, resting. But it's at this point where he then proceeds to remark that there is someone far more important that showed up, the mayor himself. At which point, Vlad comes out and immediately tries to defuse the situation, pointing out that he tries to be hip with the kids to get them to stop protesting, but does not work. Being perfectly honest, does not work. But he is insistent that they sort this out. But of course, it's at this point where obviously Danny proceeds to decide to put the next phase of his plan into action, which is to go ghost while on the roof, and then decides that the best way to handle the situation is to come out in front and with all the parents have since gathered to try and bring their kids home. But it's at this point where Danny proceeds to come out of hiding, and of course Jack immediately pulls a weapon on Danny, but Jack takes the weapon. Danny proceeds to take the weapon away from him, asking Jack to hear him out. At which point Danny proceeds to kind of take the opportunity to tell everybody that Vlad isn't what he seems, and is planning to expose him as a half ghost to finally ruin his reputation. But it's at this point where Vlad kind of did a chess move on Danny by revealing that he anticipated this and created a duplicate, uses duplication to create another clone of his ghost form, which of course Vlad plays up as an obviously different person and an obviously scary ghost. So and of course, Danny proceeds to remark that he's a little bit worried about that obviously he knows what Vlad is planning to do, but it's not going to work. He knows that Vlad is using the opportunity to bolster his own image, and of course, remarks that he's going to stop the clone, but the clone remarks that even as a clone, even as a ghost clone, he's still more powerful than Danny, and does demonstrate that yes, Danny is pretty much outmatched. While Vlad, the main Vlad, uses the opportunity to point out that obviously that Danny that ghosts run rampant in the streets, and Danny Phantom has no power to stop them, pointing out the obvious fact that his clone is kind of beating the shit out of Danny, and of course, it's at this point where Vlad then proceeds to put the last phase of his plan into action, which is to hold a gun up to his ghost self, and to finally make himself look good. And of course, the clone of Vlad does play up the fact that, oh no, please, Mr. Mayor, please don't hurt me, please. But and Danny quickly realizes that Vlad is going to waste his clone to make himself look good, but also realizes that he can use this to an advantage, and proceeds to overshadow the clone, through the clone tells Vlad to hit him with his best shot. At which point he hides behind Vlad's limo, and Vlad accidentally blows the limo up. At which point Danny proceeds to shift back to his ghost mode, making it look like Vlad just hurt an innocent child. And of course, And of course, Danny proceeds to play this up very much for the cameras and anybody who will watch, and also gives Sam and Tucker a wink to get them to kind of play on with it. And of course, they all comment on how the mayor could attack this poor, defenseless, innocent child who had nothing to do with what was happening with the ghosts. And of course, this the public image immediately turns against Vlad, who is just injured innocent child, and Jack and Maddie proceed to scoop up their kid and try to patch him up, hoping he's all right. But and of course, Vlad, forced with no other option, is unfortunately forced to agree to a ceasefire, and proceeds to use his power as mayor to completely undo everything he did throughout the episode. He dismantles the McMasters and rebuilds it as the Nasty Burger. He undoes all the previous laws and the laws that he put into place to, anti-ghost laws. He stops running his smear campaign against Danny, and Sam ultimately comments that they've won, and that he's happy that there's going to be that there's going to be a ceasefire for the time being. But of course, at this point where Danny points out this is only beginning, pointing out that where there's a truce, there's ultimately going to be a rematch. So, yeah, overall, this was something that was kind of foreshadowed in in Flirting with Disaster, but essentially, Vlad is going to be interfering a lot more in Amity Park. So, he's going to be interfering, he's going to be a lot more close to home than Danny would hope, going from this episode forward. So, unfortunately, Vlad's going to cause a whole lot of problems, but we'll get to that. But it is interesting. But it is interesting that Vlad is now mayor. It's a fun idea. It's obviously something he's implied he's done before, overshadowing a bunch of people to, become the richest, most successful man in the world. And this is just an extension of that. Him using his ghost powers to become mayor of Amity Park so he can make Danny's life a living hell. That's essentially it. But I should mention, in real life, Vlad would not be able to do this. I should mention, and there's a good reason for that. Because I can attest to this, because this was a thing that happened recently around where I live. But there was a mayor near where I live who was mayor, got voted out of office, left, and then tried to run for mayor again after he left. And he could not do this because you need to be a resident to be able to live in town. That is a thing. You need to be a resident to be able to become the mayor of a town. And obviously that got the former mayor who ran for office to have to go through a bunch of legal loopholes and paperwork to actually become mayor. But yeah, in real life that would actually happen. Vlad would not be able to run for mayor right away because he would need to go through the courts and all these other things first. And we don't actually see any of that. That unfortunately doesn't happen. Unfortunately, Vlad is a citizen in Wisconsin. He wouldn't be able to run for mayor wherever he doesn't formally move into Amity Park until the next episode. So he would never actually be able to do this. Being perfectly honest, he would never be able to. But yeah, it's just, long story short, there's a lot of legal things that I don't really know how to explain very well, but essentially Vlad would not be able to do this, and there would be a lot more, red tape in court that he would need to work through to actually become mayor of Amity Park, which the episode doesn't show any of, because it's supposed to just show Vlad doing everything he can to ruin Danny's life. That's what the episode is. But there is some things that we don't see that would absolutely happen in real life. And obviously, even if Vlad did overshadow all the voters and overshadow the judge, he'd still have to work through that red tape, regardless of what he did. So that's a thing that the episode does not show, and I figured I would just add to that to the review. But in any case, that is going to do it for my review anyway. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks down in my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Links down in the description. Yeah, go check those out. Also be sure to go check out my Discord. We're going to be doing a movie watch along this weekend. So please go check that out. I would appreciate that. And go and check out my Twitch. Go and check out my my Twitch. I stream Saturdays and Sundays. I've been playing a lot of horror games all this month. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed some of those. But yeah, well, I need to work some things out. But yeah, we're gonna continue doing that. But well, at least we're gonna do the movie. I don't know if we're gonna have another one this Saturday because of something personal that came up. We'll get to. I don't know. I may or may not talk about that. But yeah, and also be sure to go and check out my I guess go check out the playlist linked in the end screen. The top playlist is the most recent playlist, which was Megas Month. I did that for my birthday last year. Please go check that one out. I put a lot of work into that. That one was Megas XLR themed. Please go check that one out. Whereas the one before that, and the one that was more relevant to what you're watching, is Courage Month, where I watched Courage the Cowardly Dog for the entire month of Halloween and reviewed that. And it's essentially the same thing we're doing here. But yeah, go check that one out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!